original
podcast fra Arrow. Velkommen til Innovators Club. Rigtig god fornøjelse med dagens episode.
Velkommen til en Arrow podcast. Jeg hedder Rasmus Carlsen. Jeg er Business Unit Manager for eksempel Nutanix. Og i dag skal vi have besøg af Mano, som er Global CTO fra Nutanix, og Thomas Jensen, der er Country Manager for Danmark og Island. Episoden vil blive optaget på engelsk, eftersom Mano er global CTO. Så jeg vil egentlig sende bolden videre til Thomas til at starte med.
Tak, Rasmus, og thank you, Mano, for being here today. So it's a very special podcast for us, at least at Nutanix. We have our big .next event in Copenhagen this week, and I'm pleased to have one of our senior execs here in the country again, Mano.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Mano, you've been instrumental for where Nutanix is today with your 14 years of service with Nutanix. So I'm super excited to get your view on both some of the past thing and your current things, and just have a conversation about where we are now and where we are going.
Absolutely. Happy to.
So Mano, if I may start, I mean, you've been with Nutanix 14 plus years.
Yep.
What kept you passionate for so long?
See, I think we at Nutanix are very lucky, and we address some of the most challenging problems that infrastructure requirements for the enterprise. So if you think of how the evolution of infrastructure has happened, right? Clouds actually brought a lot of simplicity for the enterprise. They showed how things could be made simple, how that could be done elastic, how it could be done through automation and self-service. But they could not do that same thing on-prem in their own data centers. So taking a complex problem like what the public clouds have built and putting it in the customer's data center was very, very challenging. And I think that's what kept us all going. It's not just me, but I think as the founding team and a lot of the initial founding engineers, that was a great problem. But the thing is that we did solve it for some time, and what we realized was the application was also changing, right? We designed it for typically standard enterprise applications, but as applications morphed, the enterprise requirements kept on changing. So we had to always adapt to that, bring in newer constructs for cloud native applications, Kubernetes. So the problem set also evolved over time. So that kept it interesting. And now, as you know, that there is also AI in that space where we need to add AI into allowing customers to enrich their applications. So over time, it's been many, many things that we keep on doing to address some of the customers' problems. The second thing I think I like about it is that every piece of problem that we are doing is adding a lot of value to our customers, and they're really paying us for it. So it's not that we are doing something wild, scientific, and those research in some closet that nobody cares about. Every piece of things that we are doing is allowing our company to grow, giving new revenues, new products. So it's also exciting. It's not just doing all these problems, but being rewarded for it. And I think the final thing that I always say is the people. Nutanix as a company, we really go by three principles, right? We call ourselves people who are hungry, we are humble, and we are honest. So it's very hard to actually have all these things. You solve a challenging problem, people are willing to pay for it, and you get more and more successful financially. And then finally, you have the right set of people to do it with. The team in Nutanix is so good. Like the way we are passionate about just solving the problems, being with our customers, making sure that our customers' success is our success is very unique, because as you grow as a company, a lot of companies become so obsessed with their own products and own things, they forget about the customers. And being so customer focused makes it really rewarding. So I've been very blessed to be part of Nutanix, and I think a lot of our early employees is to be on this journey and serve our customers.
And you really been there from the start, basically, right?
Nearly, yeah.
Nearly, yeah. So when you, I would assume that when you're started this role, I'm sure it was not necessarily as a CTO, but when you started, when did you realize that we have something quite unique here? Is there a place where in the early beginning where you said, okay, I need to be part of this, or we nailed it?
When I started Nutanix, the problem statement was very applicable because I really believed in it. Because if you think of where I came from, if you look at, I came from Oracle before I joined Nutanix. And one of the things, of course, Oracle as a company, I'm not supporting it, but supporting all their actions. But from a product perspective, one of the things that Oracle did, at least for the database engine, was they simplified a lot of database operations by bringing Exadata. And I was part of the Exadata system and Exadata. And one of the things that I realized was, if you can simplify complexity, customers will adopt it. Now, infrastructure was going through the same problems. If you think of things in the past, right, the evolution of infrastructure, we started with very complex 3-tier boxes, right? We had boxes for everything, boxes for compute, boxes for storage, boxes for networking. And what the clouds did was they converted those boxes to software components, and they deployed it on commodity servers because they did not go with specific boxes for each of them. Everything became software. So the concept of actually software simplifying infrastructure and software-defined infrastructure being the foundation for the future was something that I think was already evident. It was already something that the public clouds were doing. So I believe that there was this opportunity now. And I think everybody at Nutanix was pretty convinced that, we talk a lot about, HCI being the foundation, but even when we were building HCI, the goal was always to do software-defined infrastructure, to make sure that everything that the clouds did, from not only infrastructure, but management of infrastructure, right? How you can automate a lot of stuff. If you think of operation, how do you bring operational simplicity? Like, how do your day 2 become simple? So all of this was actually part and parcel of our, I would say, long-term vision. Like, even on day 1, this whole thing about one-click upgrade was part and parcel of it. So I think we were very convinced, and we got a very early success. If you think of a company founded in 2009, end of 2009, really got out its product end of 2011, early 2012, to finally IPOing in just 4 years after our first release. So that is really, really, I would say, special, because if you see the enterprise world, people take multiple years, sometimes even a decade, to go from where they start to getting an IPO. So we knew that we were on a special track, and because of the customer adoption, the growth of the product, and really getting our IPO success in 2016, which is like literally 5 years after I joined, and nearly 4 years after our first product came out, 4.5 years after our first product came out. So it was there from the start.
Yeah. Okay. Good. What shaped your thinking in this journey?
See, Thomas, there's a thing about technical, but I think as we grow as leaders, there is something that we really need to understand. And first thing I believe is that we need to stay open and listen, because before you really decide on something, you need to get perspectives on various areas, whether it's your internal perspectives from your engineering, your external perspectives from customers, partners. You need to get that wholesome feedback about what you want to do. And I think this is what people miss before they go into the second step, because I think all intelligent people have opinions, and opinions are good. But the problem is, if you create an opinion without getting the entire feedback of, or rather a 360 feedback of all the people that are concerned with your product, the builders, the users, all of them should be part of that feedback. And once you have heard that, I think the important thing is, there you will find that many of those opinions are conflicting. So the second thing as a leader that you really have to understand, and I think this is a great transition, is initially when you start as an engineer, you're very opinionated, right? I know the right way. And then the second thing you're, okay, no, I'm not always right. I look around, find feedback. But then after feedback, you need to come to a decision, because there'll be, 5 ways of doing the same thing. And 5 people will say that you should do it this way. So you have to form an opinion in the best possible way. And every leader needs to be very grounded, make the decision. And then finally, you have to start influencing. Because leadership, one thing I realized, is not about force. It's a matter of how do you make the idea that you chose to be something that everybody agrees on, so that everybody is on board. So I think that is a very fundamental change. I think as you grow in leadership, you understand these 3 things, because you have to get the feedback, you have to make a decision, and you have to convince people. And all 3 are something that you have to learn to do. Because I think the only thing that engineers, specifically from people who come from technical background, is the decision making. We have very opinionated decision. We don't know the beginning. We don't know the second. Like, we don't know how to take feedback. We don't know how to influence people. And I think as you grow, these 2 learnings are very essential to be successful, is that we need to do both. We need to actually get the feedback and then finally influence our decisions.
But I've been with Nutanix 8 years now. This is, and you also mentioned the hungry, humble, and honest. That is exactly who we are. I mean,
Yes.
we do listen, right? So we don't. It's not an internal task. It's about listening also to our customers and
Absolutely.
embed that. Yeah, great. So, Mano, here in the Nordics, customers are extremely quality driven. At least that's what we believe ourselves. It's all about stability and simplicity and predictability that really matters deeply to us. I mean, when you look at Nordic customers versus maybe the rest, what stands out about our IT approach?
So let me start with maybe Nordics is a section of it, but EMEA in general, right? One of the things that we see in EMEA is the growth of sovereign clouds, because with the stricter regulations that are coming in, whether it's GDPR or NIS2, many of the companies need to actually bring highly secure, compliant infrastructure inside their data centers. And they need to actually govern them with all of these compliance factors. So I think having an infrastructure which actually is capable of delivering them is meaningful for them. So I see that extremely well across Europe, even some part of Asia too, is that where in Americas, there is a lot more adoption of the public cloud. Outside America, there is more adoption of sovereign cloud. And that helps Nutanix, because at heart, we are a company who allows you to deploy these cloud operating model anywhere you choose. Specifically for the Nordics, I think there is great growth in manufacturing. So that allows us to do not only core data centers, but also do a lot of work at the edge. Because, if you think of any sort of application deployment typically has three reasons where you choose a place to deploy an application. It could be maybe because of cost, because it's cheaper, or sometimes it is because of compliance, like we do for GDPR and NIS2. But third is latency, because at the edge, specifically for manufacturing, you actually need to have them where your manufacturing plant is, because your control system cannot be far off. So that's something that is very helpful for us. We also see a lot of growth in areas like all the transportation hubs and airports. They all need these edge and private cloud locations, and there are many companies that we are actually working with to make that successful. Whether it's Vestas. Vestas is a great example. They're doing all their windmills and making sure that the windmills control systems can run close to where they are. We have Grundfos, who's actually creating all the pumps, all your water pumps and things. They are using Nutanix. We have actually Icelandair, the flagship carrier of Iceland. They are using us. So we see great growth in Nordics in all these sectors, right? Both manufacturing, transportation, and we expect to grow a lot here because we expect this, I would say, manufacturing-driven country to take more private cloud as the basis for their computing needs as opposed to public cloud. So really excited with the growth in Nordics.
Good to hear that. If I may change the subject slightly, There's so many moving parts of things happening in the market in general. And we all know, and it's not a secret, and we can talk about that also Broadcom bought VMware. We had Red Hat bought by IBM. I mean, there's many changes happening. For us, it's a competition picture, or those that we, in many cases, compete against. How do you see this new era that customers need to adapt to? I mean, all these changing ownerships and because companies, when they move from one ownership structure to another, things change, right?
Yeah, we have seen a lot of uncertainty for our customers. If you see from the perspective of Broadcom, some of our customers have seen issues with cost, negotiating on pricing, or sometimes it's been issues with support and sales because we have seen, Broadcom has been shedding a lot of their personnel, which is causing a lot of, I would say, confusion to the customers because sometimes they don't even know whom to call. There are regions where the sales and support people have been, let go. So effectively, that has been something that the customers are facing. Red Hat, on the other hand, has been really, really strong and pushing their OpenShift platform specifically for containerization. But as you see from standard market research like Gartner, what we see is it is great for modern applications. But if you look at the traditional virtualized applications where you have virtual machine admins who want to deploy them, OpenShift is quite complex because I think you really need to be a strong platform engineer with knowledge of Kubernetes. And Kubernetes is not easy for virtual machine admins to deploy and manage. So both these platforms actually have their own, Broadcom as a company has their own problems, and OpenShift has a problem on the existing infrastructure. So from Nutanix perspective, what we really believe is the best solution for customers is to move from a virtual machine platform to another virtual machine platform where the automation operations are very similar. So a virtual admin, if they're used to managing VMware, finds within a couple of days being comfortable to manage a Nutanix estate. But at the same time, we are also building the constructs to bring in modern cloud-native applications, to bring in AI. So all the things that we are doing is allowing the customer to also look at the future, not just move their traditional infrastructure from Broadcom to us, but also look at the future and transition to pure cloud-native or AI. So I think we are in some ways very unique. We are not pushing the cloud native strategy. We are committed to a customer's success, and we have the capabilities to take them to where they need to be in the future. So that is what I find Nutanix as the best alternative. Of course, I'm a little biased, but it is the best alternative for a customer trying to come out of Broadcom, get a platform, and then modernize.
You just briefly touched on AI, and that is just exploding in every organization, at least from a conversation perspective, right? Mm-hmm. There's conversation all over there. If you should maybe position Nutanix in that era or that world, what is it that we are trying to do? What is it we bring to the table?
So AI is a very interesting problem because if you look at AI is a complex compute problem. So if you think of what, the traditional infrastructure was, we only worried about efficiencies of CPUs, management of CPUs. That hypervisors did a great job at it. But with AI, what happens is that you need so much parallel computing that now GPUs become a very important part of your infrastructure. For networking and I/O, DPUs become very essential. So there is a lot more hardware components that become important because of AI, because many of these things which were part of the high-performance computing environment, HPC area, are becoming mainstream because of AI applications. So first thing is important is, if I am a customer who's going to deploy AI, and an AI in a location where I really care about, that means I need that compliance, I need that security, I need to be able to manage this complex compute. The second thing about AI is a very complex data problem. So that means you need to actually have the ability to manage a lot of unstructured and structured storage. You need to actually have the ability to create data pipelines, which can actually clean them, which can actually do ETLs and transform them so that they can be utilized by AI. So that means you need to have the ability to have managed database services, managed pipelines, so you can actually just plug and play them to create them so that you can, transform your data for your AI use cases. And finally, the important thing about AI is this whole growth of, I would say, foundation models, because foundation models have simplified AI to some extent, but at the same time, foundation models are very hard to deploy, size, and manage. So what we at Nutanix are doing is to address all these problems, give you a very flexible compute environment which can manage all these complex hardware, all the way from your CPUs to GPUs to DPUs. We are working on making sure that you have the data components like managed databases, in future managed pipelines, managed message buses, so that you can actually do those transformations of your data as you feed into AI. And finally, we have the ability for you to manage and size models. Now, the other thing that you want to do is make sure that as you're growing in these areas of models is like, how do you make sure the access to these models are more secure? How do you make sure that you have the auditability of all the things that you are doing with these models? And finally, you need to have the efficiency of utilizing the same model for multiple applications. And this is very I think important as you go into the agentic space, because if you think of agents, many of these agents need a model. In fact, all agents need a model, specifically agents which are using generative AI. But the important thing is that if each agent that you get from either the market and each agent that you create comes with its own model, then the cost of models and the cost of GPUs will explode. Because in the future, we expect lots and lots of agents. So ability to share a model across agents while giving each of these agents their security and govern them is very, very important. That means along with the model, we need to have some sort of guardrail models. We need to have the ability to actually, in some ways, create a sandbox for these agents so that they don't go out and do arbitrary things. So the security of these models, auditability of these agents, and all these sandboxes, that is very, very critical things that you need to do for AI. So AI is many, many things, all the way from basic compute, basic data management, model management, and the security and governance of agents and models of the future.
And everybody talks about AI. There's not a technology company that don't have an AI message about go with us. We have a complete AI factory platform. How are we different? Not go through all competitors, but why would it be relevant to include us in that conversation?
So I think most AI companies are trying to address one problem. Frankly, if you think of although there is an AI factory, and I think many of the companies are also partnering with us to add us to their AI factories. They've been motion with all the major AI factories to see how Nutanix AI can be plugged into it. But we are trying to address the whole stack. Our whole goal is all the way from hardware management, which we do, including things like how do we manage your firmware, to a Kubernetes and hypervisor stack, which you can manage the higher levels of the compute, to the application deployment, and finally model deployment and management, right? So we are really across the stack helping it. Now, there is one area we are definitely focusing on more than others is inference, because we believe that most of the applications or the growth in AI will happen due to inference. Because if you think of AI, right, it goes in many phases, specifically for models. So when a model, initially you train them, then you fine tune them, and then you do inference either natively against the model or with some sort of embeddings using RAG, right? So we believe that as applications use models more, inference will be the area where things will explode. So what we are focusing on is making sure that inference become the central piece for application deployment and application management. Because if you think of the economics of AI, right, creating a model is cost. Using a model is revenue. What we are really trying to do is helping application writers, helping infrastructure players to actually generate more revenue. That means use that model more. And that's where we are focusing on, is the efficiency of use as opposed to efficiency of create. Now, if you think of also the place where we play, we are particularly good outside the public cloud, right? Of course, we play in the public cloud. We have our own cloud clusters where we run. We also are extending our Kubernetes platform and our storage platform in the public cloud. But if you think our strongest suit is actually in the edge and in core data centers or even service providers, right? And in that space, we expect more inference than in the public cloud. Because if you see, most of the training is actually happening in the public cloud, and that's okay. We find that all the frontier models today, whether you're taking, the Gemini, which actually now interestingly are also having open source components, or ChatGPT, or all of these, or Anthropic, Claude, all of these are trained in the public cloud. But we expect many of these, and specifically open source variants. Now, if you see, ChatGPT, of course, has a cloud variant, but they're also creating GPT OSS, which is actually now something that we can run on-prem or the edge. Gemini is creating Gemma, and Gemma series can actually run on-prem. So we are also seeing a lot of these frontier models to create their open source counterparts, at least open weights counterparts, which we can now deploy on-prem. So that gives us a lot of flexibility for our customers so that they can actually choose to run these models near the data where they might actually not want to move to the public cloud, data which is very, very regulated, and they need to be in a specific location. Now we can bring AI to that data. So that, I think, is a very critical thing, because if AI was all in the public cloud, specifically AI inference was all in the public cloud, you had to move data to AI. And in fact, this is a very important thing to understand, is moving data to AI is not only a security and a compliance issue, it's also a very, very, I would say, inefficient way to do it, because data has a lot of gravity. So if you think of compute, although models are complex, models are actually very small in size. They're tens of gigabytes, but data could be in petabytes. And you could have petabytes of data distributed across data centers, which are very compliant data centers, regulated data centers, and the edge. Moving these petabytes of data to the cloud is very, very expensive, as opposed to moving AI to data and moving AI and intelligence close to where the data is. And I think that's what we really can do in Nutanix, is that making sure we provide a compute, data, and model management layer, which we can deploy everywhere. We can deploy it in the edge, in the core data centers, or in the service provider, so that we can actually provide that secure enclosure in which you can start working on your regulated data, get more insights about your regulated data. And then that's what helps enterprises to gather intelligence on the whole data set, right? If the data set is distributed all across public cloud edge, you cannot just get your entire intelligence looking at only your public cloud data. So you have to bring in this. So with our infrastructure and capabilities, we can bring AI to where your data is.
Normally, if we should fast forward a bit, I know AI is here and it's still new, also to some extent. But if you should look in the next 2-3 years, is it still AI we're going to talk about in that journey, or do you see anything interesting out there in the next coming years that is would be a big topic for us to talk about as well?
See, I think the more important thing about AI is, how do we make AI cost effective? The problem with AI today, the most important problem, specifically outside the public cloud, is actually energy, and being able to deploy these AI efficiently in locations that you care about. Even like, traditional, if you look at even the best traditional data centers, we had racks which was, in 15 to 20 kilowatts. Now, a single GPU dense machine is 11 kilowatts on a 5-rack unit. So effectively, if you want to pack up a rack, you're really looking at, 100 plus kilowatts. So that is a redesign of the data center. So I think the main thing we have to think about is, first of all, of course, this will happen. It's not that all data centers will remain as they are. There'll be a lot of data centers which will be revamped. But I think the next thing that will happen is, how do we bring in newer hardware, newer technologies that can actually run in the power budget of the traditional data center while providing a lot of AI and intelligence. So if you see from hardware, we are already seeing the RTX 6000, which has actually reduced the power demands compared to H100s, still giving you a lot of the similar performance for your inference. And I think that thing will continue. You see of new generations of hardware, whether it is custom hardware coming out of startups or, in the public cloud, we already see Google TPUs already trying to reduce their energy footprint. So I'm assuming that there will be a lot of technology that will be built which will accelerate AI and come to the data center at a lower cost and lower energy budget. The next thing that I think is, people are going to go away from very large language models to lots of small language models. And the way I explain this is very simply, like, a large language model is like, it knows about everything. Now, if you are, let's say, working on a legal, application, that AI need not know everything about art or need not know everything about medicine, right? So we can reduce the complexity of the AI itself. Because AI's complexity is basically number of nodes, right? And typically you have billions of nodes or sometimes trillions of nodes. We call it parameters, like how many parameter model, but it's effectively the nodes in the neural network, right? So we can have much smaller ones which can fit into much smaller GPUs or even partitions of GPUs, which can actually help specific applications. So I think that would be a very important growth, is both from a hardware efficiency as well as the growth of small language models. In fact, now a lot of people talk about SLMs instead of LLMs, which are very targeted specific language models for specific use cases and then target applications for that. That means now from an infrastructure angle, we are also seeing, we hope to see that in, like, for example, our Nutanix AI to actually target a lot of, to support a lot of models, inside the same framework. So a customer can have a same Nutanix inference endpoint through an AI and then have multiple SLMs and then provide strict access to different applications. Like, for example, my legal model can only be accessed to the legal application, or medical model can be accessed. But there is a central hub in the enterprise which manages all these models. So I believe both of these will happen. Now, the point is, I don't have a crystal ball to say what, but the directionality is obvious, because large language models need to come to the enterprise in somewhat targeted versions for specific use cases, and we do need the ability to bring down the cost and energy of these hardware accelerators, because this is not sustainable, with both the growth of LLMs as well as the growth of energy needs of our data centers.
Interesting. I've started to say, I get the question a lot. Who's your targeted customers? And always says those with burning ambitions. Right, that's the ones that we want to speak with. That's the one where we really we like to work with. What would your burning ambition be for Nutanix? And what is your burning ambition for Nutanix?
See, I think, the main thing that I really want is to transform enterprises to clouds. That is our vision, right? And that involves participation of enterprises to do that. Like, IT organizations traditionally has done a lot of things manually, have actually not behaved like the SREs that the public clouds have with the right automation, operational skill sets. So what I would really love is if enterprises can be the cloud providers for their internal organizations, right? They become the SRE, the servicification of their applications, servicification of the infrastructure, so that anybody in their companies would not need to go to the public cloud, but use their private cloud to get the functionality they need. That is basically what we set up to do, and in fact, that is still our goal, is making. But it's a long path. I mean, first of all, there is a skill set gap, right? It's not easy to find talent because in many ways the clouds are eating up all the talent. If you see anybody coming out of college today, they're probably targeting and going to the big clouds to be employed. So attracting new talent requires these IT providers to actually modernize themselves, not to think about doing things the traditional 3-tier way, not to go and think about doing it manual way. So I think our goal, is not just a goal for me, but it's just, I think, for all infrastructure companies, is how do we morph enterprises and enterprise IT to look and feel like the public cloud. When that happens, and we see a lot of it happening, I feel myself successful. I think that's what that's the end goal, right? Is that can an IT take Nutanix and provide a public cloud-like experience to their lines of businesses, to their customers?
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Mano, thank you for sharing your experience and your perspective and your passion. It's definitely a privilege to have you in Denmark and Copenhagen. It's not the first time, and it's definitely not the last time. You have to promise me that.
Sure.
And thank you for giving our listeners
I love Copenhagen. Right? It's a great city and great people and
smart people.
Yeah. And very importantly, great food. I'm a foodie myself. I love food. And I realized, I was reading that Copenhagen has the maximum density of Michelin star restaurants in a single city.
Yes.
What's better than
you should move here. You should move here. But thank you so much, Mano. It's been a pleasure. And thank you to Ara for recording the podcast.
Husk, du kan finde links og mere materiale i podcastens episodebeskrivelse. Tak fordi du lyttede med. Ha' en skøn dag.